Hello, my mates. Rafi in the bothy with review number 1000. Whoop, steady on. 1118 extras. You know, I've always been concerned about the cats knocking a bottle of whiskey over in the bothy and smashing the bottle on the floor. And I'm sure if it did happen, I would be a little bit upset, but I'd get over it and get on with it, and I'm sure you'd love to see it. So if it ever does happen, I'll be sure and record it and post the video for you of me on my hands and knees trying to soak up what's left of spilled single malt Scotch whisky. And there's a good reason for that, because we don't want to waste it, do we? Scotch whisky is, even when it's fairly priced, it's very expensive. And the reason for the expense is the absurdly outrageous, plundering nature of taxation that goes on alcohol, because it was normalised through history. Just became normalised. What there's basically the deep state was, well, the state was saying is luxuries should be subject to extra tax because they're luxuries. Now, gold's a luxury, but it's not even subject to value-added tax in the UK. So figure that one out. So very inconsistent. Tobacco and alcohol have most certainly been targeted. I really don't see them targeting pharmaceutical preparations, particularly the cosmetic ones. That's not going to happen. So meanwhile, as time marches on, we end up paying a significant premium for our whiskey or any alcohol that we consume, no matter its quality. And this is why we need to know exactly what we're smelling and tasting when we have a glass in our hand. We need to know, having paid a premium for this luxury, that it is in fact a luxury. And if it isn't, we want to know why. Now, I've just reviewed this bottle of Blue Label Glen-Scotia 12-year-old. It's not the standard 12-year-old. It's a kind of limited edition without being stated as limited edition. And it gives some quite revealing information. This is natural colour. So look at the colour of that. That is a natural colour. And what that shows you is a lot of first fill, fresh cask influence. You know, if I was to just say, you know, what do you think of this sherried whiskey? You'd believe me. You absolutely would, because of the colour. It's relatively dark for a bourbon cask matured whiskey. But there's a clue in what is not said as much as what is said. And it states in the front of the label, matured in first fill bourbon barrels. And yet when I taste the whiskey, I am not getting the immediate association of first fill bourbon barrels, although I certainly recognise that they're in there and they've got a very active contribution overall to this whiskey. But there's more going on. And it's my personal opinion that this is what's called a recovered batch. Now, recovered means, I'll explain this first, that see when the professionals, the people that actually deal hands-on with whiskey, go into a warehouse, one of their first jobs is to see the quality of what they've got. So they've got to go around all the casks, literally all the casks, and taste them. Doesn't take a lot. They're doing a lot of smelling, but they've got to taste, and then they'll spit into the spittoon so as they don't get pushed by the third row in the warehouse. Because when you've got several hundred casks in an hour to get round, you can't hang about. I mean, these people are doing it for a living, not a hobby. And the consequence is they need to establish which are our good barrels and which are our crap barrels. And in particular, when a distillery changes hands, The new owners need to go in, ideally before they buy the distillery, because it's got a lot to do with the actual value of the business. And I've seen some big companies make huge mistakes in overpaying for a business because they haven't spent enough time sussing out the real quality of the casks in the warehouse. And casks vary, not by a little bit, not by that much, not by that much. Cask influence varies enormously. You can have a series of identical looking casks in a row in a warehouse, and you can go down that line and they will all taste significantly different. And you're saying, oh, but they're all ex-bourbon barrels. Sure they are. But wood isn't wood. There's all different types of oak wood. There's winter oak wood, winter harvested, spring harvested, summer harvested, autumn harvested, low altitude, high altitude. Even the minerals in the soil will affect the chemical composition of the oak as the tree is growing. Is it going to be at a higher altitude, slower growing, colder, with denser wood fibres? Or is it going to be rapidly growing because it's got plenty of water and it's a nice sunny spot in the south side of a low-lying valley? So it's going to grow faster, and therefore the fibres of the wood are going to be more separate. It's going to be more porous. And as for the saps in springtime, before the leaves can even appear, there needs to be energy transferred from the roots to the end of the branches, and that's called sap. And sap is generally sweet. In other words, maple syrup. You don't get sweeter than maple syrup as tree syrup, harvested in springtime as the sap rises. Birch syrup is also a thing, a substantial thing, and it's absolutely delicious. You get tree from sugar. You get sugar from trees. That's a fact. A lot of sugar can reside within the wood, in the oak, depending on its provenance. And so, as you go down this line in your warehouse, one barrel will be quite a sweet version of the whiskey. Another will be particularly dry. Another will be rather flavourless. Because, why? Because when they were kilning the wood at the cooperage, they left it in the oven too long and they dried it out too far. Then the coopers discovered they were having to bend and shape overly dried wood. What do then? They stick the staves in a barrel of water. They stick the planks in a barrel of water to re-moisturise them, to make them easier to work with. And they also steam heat them. See, when you steam heat wood in order to get it into the necessary shape for constructing a barrel, it drives the flavour out the wood. Nobody tells you about this. It's not part of the narrative, but it's very useful to know because it starts to give explanation. So here we are in the warehouse. The previous owners were penny pinchers. They weren't spending, not really investing, and not really caring about the business. And do you know what? Rather circumstantially, that's exactly Glen Scotia's situation roughly 12 years ago. Before they came under new ownership of a new company, of a financial investment style of operation, who have been prepared to spend the money on the product rather than try to pape over the cracks with boring old yawn-inducing marketing claptrap. So, the new team go into the warehouse. They know the staff, and there's not many staff at the distillery, have been doing the best they can with the resources they've got, and they know they've been working long hours every week and they're demoralised. And they know that the quality of the wood in the warehouse isn't particularly great. What are they going to do? They're going to recask. That's what they're going to do. They're going to single out, when they're going around the warehouse, checking all the casks, they will know very, very quickly from purely an experienced palate, right, these are dying casks or dead casks. We need to salvage the content of these casks, which is perfectly intact, and put them into new casks to brown them up, to recover the whiskey, to make what's there sellable. And in my opinion, and I'm stressing this as an opinion, it's important that I do that. I think this is what has happened here. And I think, frankly, there's nothing wrong with it, because all whiskey businesses do this all the time. The smart businesses do it a lot less, because they invest in good wood. You cannot beat, for any whiskey, you cannot beat having a warehouse full of good wood. Because the thing about good quality wood and good quality casks is you can recondition them, reuse them, keep them going, especially if you've got a cooper in your premises. One of the most valuable and important members of staff in an entire distillery. Why? Because it's the barrels that make the whiskey. The spirit is not whiskey. Distilleries don't make whiskey, they make what's called raw British spirit, or new make, or cleric as it's sometimes called. It's new make spirit. It's got to be 3 years and a day in oak casks before it can be called whiskey. And the quality of those casks is everything. You can put the best, most artisanal new make spirit from your shining copper stills into a crap cask, and your whiskey is dying in the wood. It's fading, failing, and one of the signs of this is simply the loss of flavour, the catastrophic, comprehensive loss of spirit flavour, because the wood is dead and it kills the whiskey. Wood is absolutely vital. It's the cooper who is the one who has the experience, the skills and the tools and the stamina to take a cask which is not up to much and repair it. And while they're doing it, they'll repair the barrel heads. They'll replace the barrel heads with fresh wood. This is one of the most effective ways of economically revitalising a cask. Sure, you can send your casks away to a factory somewhere where they'll knock the head off, they'll sandblast it, they'll shave it out, they'll thin the wood as they're doing so, and then they'll rechar it heavily, which weakens the wood further. And this is one of the issues with shaved, charred and retoasted STR casks, they call them. One of the biggest drawbacks and problems that you encounter with them, that the industry never discusses with us at all, never, is the physically weakening of the casks, because the actual thickness of the wood is reduced, and in doing so, so's the strength and integrity of these casks to take the knock, or to remain over time completely sealed and intact and not spring any leaks. Thin wood makes more leaks. That's what happens. It's just the way of it. If you really, really, really want to know about Whiskey Malt Mates, if you want to really understand, you need to visit a cooperage and speak to a cooper. But there's no distillery visits for that. There are extremely few distilleries where they would even allow you to talk with a cooper. Do you know why? Because the cooper's rough and ready, and they might use some swear words and hurt people's feelings. The fact is, distilleries don't want you to know. They want you to look at the shiny stills and the brass still safe and think of how marvellous it is, because it's pure eye candy. And it's warm, and you can hear the steam, and you can hear the pipes creaking, and oh, isn't it marvellous? But what these stills are making, the clear liquor that is pouring into the receiver tanks, its future will only ever be decided by the basic competency of the casks that the spirit goes into. And if those casks are shit, you're going to get shit whiskey every time. However, to the credit of Glen Scotia, they have members of staff who can take underperforming maturation and know how to recover it, and when they do, they present it to us as an interesting small batch bottling, knowing that we're going to educate ourselves from it. My final words, to just summarise things. It seems ridiculous that you can have so much variation in results from something like a bourbon cask, for example. The 12 bourbon casks all lying in a row from exactly the same bourbon distillery, from the same cooperage in the US, all harvested from the same forest in the US, can produce such diverse and varied flavours of Scotch whisky when you're putting exactly the same distillery spirit into the casks. So there are 12 casks, 12 single malts, for example, working illustrative example, Glen Scotia. And one cask is going to be phenomenal. 2 casks going to be really good. 1 cask will be a complete turkey. Really weird. Not bad whiskey, just weird. Unbottleable. So I'll have to go into a big batch, get lost in the mix. But you start to become aware of this when you're buying independent single cask bottlings. And if you've got experience now, if you're 4 or 5 years into your whisky journey, I'd say this is time for you to really explore the singularity of the single cask and see how that singularity plays, affects, directs, manipulates the actual single malt whisky in it that you already have references for because you've bought official bottlings. You'll be absolutely amazed at just the diversity of signature of one single malt from a number of single casks that you've bought over the years. Even more so if you just stick to either sherry casks or bourbon casks. And then when you start blending your single casks together from out the bottle into the glass, you'll discover flavours that you've never even encountered before. There is a genuinely almost occult alchemy goes on with whisky because it's such a delicate spirit. And it's only when you look back at ancient scientific preparations of and preservation of herbs and the tonics from way back to Greek times, to the making of perfumes in the Middle East during medieval times, of the remarkable properties and transaction of distillation. No alchemist in ancient times would be without their little still, and you don't need much, particularly if you're supplying for yourself, which of course is illegal in most countries because illegal's fashionable these days. Thank you for watching. I'm going to call it a day now and let you carry on with your malt moments. See you soon. clicker's not quite clicking. I think it needs a bit of a clean out. We'll try again.